Hi, and welcome to Studio Cinema Saturday, the show where we review films old and new, the ones that you don't like and the ones that you do. I'm your host, Dalton, and today I'm joined by Ham and Kale. And today we're going to be discussing the action war thriller, Civil War by Alex Garland.
It's an A24 production, and you may know Alex Garland from other such films as Ex Machina, Annihilation, and Men.
The cast reads as follows. Kirsten Dunst is your lead. She plays Lee Smith. Wagner Moura is Joel. Kaylee Spaney is Jesse. Stephen McKinley plays Sammy. Jesse Plemons is the soldier. And Nick Offerman is your United States president. General, spoiler-free right off the bat thoughts. How did you guys enjoy the movie?
It was very enjoyable. Going into this, I knew I was going to have to watch it twice, one day after the other. And I was really hoping I'd enjoy it, and I did. And after my viewing last night, I was like, hey, I'm ready for my noon viewing tomorrow for Studio Cinema Saturday. I thought it was very well made, disturbing in all the best ways possible, I guess.
I remember sitting in the Dolby Atmos theater thinking, I'm probably going to give this film, I kind of already knew the score. Like, probably 3/4 of the way through the movie. Like, I was
don't
just...
give it to us yet.
I'm not going to, but I am teasing it because I did enjoy this movie. I felt very uncomfortable, especially in the third act. I don't typically feel unnerved in movies per se, but since this is kind of grasping at a very possible reality, unfortunately, it unnerves me.
And I jumped out of my seat at one of the gunshots in this film. There are a lot of gunshots that are literally designed for the moment you kind of slip out of your uneasiness, a loud gunshot in the Dolby Atmos sound experience theater at AMC. It just sells you on this movie. I was bought in, I was hooked.
And I'll say, just maybe for the spoiler-free audience, can we touch on how it's not really a political film in spite of its subject matter?
A lot of people are going to say, does this lean left? Does this lean right? You have a lot of art that does and a lot of representation that does. This is something that picks the side of humanity. I think it just is showing what could be a future outcome if humanity doesn't stop fighting amongst itself and our country. Spoiler warning, we're about to get into the rest of the film. Let's start by just talking about the story. There are these moments where the stress level is really lower, and then something nails you to spike your stress again, get your heart pumping. And that is kind of how the film keeps you. I don't think I was ever bored during this movie, and it was paced well.
Opening of the film is very telling of how the rest of it is going to go. Because you start off fairly basic. You get presidential address about certain events going on. Our main character, Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst, is watching it. And she's in New York City, and in the background you see an explosion go off. You're like, okay, this is the world we're in. And the next day we get a riot kind of going on for like water distribution. And there's this song playing. It's not like a downbeat song, it's more of an upbeat song. And it's kind of setting the pace at which we're going at this point. As the song intensifies, the people get more unruly and a little bit restless, and we get this setup when they first begin. And I think you can clock it as just another person watching. As I clocked it the first time I was viewing, I'm like, this person's about to do something terrible. And to me, that set a ticking time bomb. And both times watching, I'm just uncomfortable waiting for a suicide bombing.
And the way they present it, too, because it's in the background of a shot. It's Lee talking to Jesse, and then you see whoever it was running with the American flag, I believe, charging into the crowd of people. Flag. I think they really let you live in these scenes for a little while, because there's a mix of slow-mo and your live-action battle scenes, and even this riot with the bombing. You have these intercuts of the camera stills, which kind of slow things down, and also later in the film, more in the third act, kind of work as another tension-building device, because you're waiting for the moment that you kind of maybe see coming, just because of, I think early on in the film they let us know that this is a war and that people are going to die, there are consequences. They show that with Sammy, first off, so I'm like, after that moment in the film, I know someone else in our ensemble cast is probably going to buy that.
The two main characters of this film, I would say, are Lee and Jesse. Automatically, I'm thinking about these two characters. They have similar backstories, we find out. Both are from these rural areas where people are acting like the Civil War isn't going on. We get this moment while they're trying to warn Jesse of how harsh this reality is now, and she says, if I die out there, are you going to take a picture of me? Lee is pretty much like,
what do you think?
Right back to the end of the film, and she ends up taking the picture of Lee dying.
Yeah.
She has become Lee in
many
this
ways,
coming-of-age type story. And I think it's an even deeper warning to just the audience that it's trying to hit of, if things got so bad that America went into a modern-day civil war, there are going to be kids who have to grow up through it.
Everyone else is affected. We see that in the fact that in the middle of the movie, kind of, they're halfway through their journey, and they have to stay at a refugee camp that is full of other people. And not like, a bunch of no good nicks or like rough-looking people. It's our neighbors. A bunch of people have just been misplaced by this war.
The war has created a severe lack of resources in America.
And we see that in multiple ways. In the beginning of the film, Lee is trying to upload the photos from the riot bombing. The power goes out.
Yeah.
And Sammy mentions it's been happening every day that week. So power spotty, Wi-Fi was even said to be unreliable. And you get this from Jessie when they're at the refugee camp. She's developing photo negatives.
Black and white film.
So cell phones have no service in this world.
It looked like in that moment whenever we visit the stadium that we'd kind of reverted back to like the pre-smartphone era, that we weren't always looking at a screen, that people were they were gathered in groups talking and looking at books and
around
reading
fires. Yeah,
there was a bigger sense of community,
Yes.
They were like the happiest people in the film.
And I'm going to section off of the story just a little bit and talk about the music for just a second. It reminds me of like the music that we hear that would come out of like the Vietnam era and World War II, this lighter sounding music that is coming from people who are trying to creatively express that they have hope for the world.
Another fun thing about the music in this film, I thought, especially I noticed it in the scene where they roll up on the old abandoned like golf course, I believe it is, and you've got the two soldiers who are sniping. Whenever they first roll up, they're getting shot at, but right before that happens, it's playing a Christmas song.
A Silent Night.
Associated with a time of like joy. And you just kind of have this slow tension building, the stretching of the rubber band until there's just gunfire out of nowhere. Rises and pitfalls and just stretching out its tension, and then just having like an explosion go off, or like a cutting right into, we're now just documenting this fight that's happening.
And it very well represents how on edge everyone has to be to just survive in this world.
Exactly.
True.
Everything is almost out to get them in this. Like, they get brief reprieves, but even at that, one of the biggest examples of this is they get to a small town they even admit, they're like, where are we? Because this feels like everything from before this war. And they go into a little store and have a nice moment between each other, and Lee goes outside to Sammy, and Sammy's just smoking a cigarette, and he's like, they're having a little conversation about, yeah, this is pretty nice. And then Sammy's like, look at the roofs, don't make it noticeable. And we kind of see what's keeping this little town together. It's just people on the roofs with guns.
Just almost their
kind of
own
overlooking.
militia.
Yeah.
It makes me think of when we roll up to the gas station too, and there's the man sitting out in front of the gas station with his rifle, and he's pointing it at him, and that's where we found out that the U.S. dollar means pretty much nothing, and they offer this man Canadian money to get what they want. The locals have taken up force amongst themselves.
The federal government has one goal in this movie, and that is to fight the Western forces. So everybody else is kind of left to their own devices at this point.
That's why people can just sit on their farms and ignore the war.
You have Lee and Jesse who are kind of in the mindset of like, doing nothing changes nothing.
Yes.
But Lee has had a rough go at it. Obviously her parish in the end is representative of that. But we see the scene where she's in the bathtub, and just has all these thoughts of dead soldiers. And
she's seeing all the photos she's taken before, basically, and the atrocities she's witnessed. And we get to see her kind of reflect on that before they see the small little combat scene with the guys in Hawaiian shirts. She reflects on it with Sammy in this way where it's like, I thought I was doing something with it. It almost seems like maybe she's lost faith in what she does a little bit, because she sent all these photos of the horrors of just war back home, and yet it happened where she lived.
Right.
And she says, I thought I was sending a message back home saying, don't do it. Don't do it here. Look how it's going over here.
And I think that's why she's so upset, too, whenever Joel lets Jesse come along for the trip to D.C., because she doesn't want Jesse to undergo all this trauma that she has.
And really, what reward does she get in the end for all this? It kills her. She kind of seems like she knew it was coming. She doesn't seem to be one who really was running from death. She was charging into it every time she went out there.
But there was a shift in her character over the course of the film, because at the beginning I feel like she's just numb to all of the pain. And then over the course of the film, like, by the time she's in DC, she can't go into photo mode. Like,
no.
She is just being traumatized by what's happening.
I think it is her getting close with Jesse, because I would say by the end of the film, she loves Jesse. It's getting so close to that and caring about what happens to Jesse. You know, she's freaking out when they lose Jesse for a while and they go into the Todd scene. She charges them back into that to go get her.
You know, you mentioned it. Let's talk about it, as you called it, the Todd scene. Jesse Plemons.
The Todd scene. I can't believe I called it that.
Jesse Plemons plays Todd in Breaking Bad, so we kind of refer to
He doesn't have a name in this film, so we just call him Todd over and over.
A colleague had rolled up, and they kind of had this little thing where
they do this
fun.
They do this funny little dangerous car stunt where they go through the window of each other's car. And he takes off with Jesse, and it's originally this prank, but after they're run off the road, Lee is on a hunt to go get Jesse back, and they find the car empty, and they're being walked out to their death by Todd from Breaking Bad.
Yes, they get marched to a friggin' mass grave of non-combatants.
And they're on their knees.
We don't even know who the soldier's outfit is. Because in the movie, we can clearly see certain soldiers have certain patches. These guys are just wearing, like, BDUs and have, like, M4s. So we don't even know what the heck they're doing there.
Right.
Sammy says something really great. He's like, we don't know what they're doing. But from what I can see, they don't want to be seen doing it.
The clip from the trailer, he's like, what kind of American are you? He asks them, and we still never find out where he's from.
Yeah, this is the most intense part of the film, and it's a part where the momentum shifts for the group, because this encounter, 2 people die here, get shot in front of everybody. Jesse Plemons' character just starts putting lead in people. And this is the moment that Kel did jump at.
Yeah.
Like, when he shoots Bohai, Kel about jumped out of his seat, man.
And what I love so much about this scene, too, is that they build up Sammy the whole movie. He's this old man. He can't run. They're like, you don't even need to come with us up here because you can't run away when it goes down. And in Breaking Bad fashion, he drives through, runs Jesse Plemons over. He saves the rest of the press team. They're able to get out of there, but that is the most stressful scene in the film. And it's probably the biggest moment in the film where I'm sitting there like, how are they going to get out of this?
I have to disagree with you both, though, just because I don't think it's the most stressful moment. I think that raid on Washington, D.C. is whenever my heart was just up the most. Just because we're intercut with those stills. They're just kind of slowly teasing you with, when is one of them going to get shot? Just because we're peeking around corners and bullets are flying, mortars are going off.
I mean, yeah, the D.C. battle, it's like something out of a Call of Duty game. It's like Modern Warfare 2 with the Battle of D.C. and stuff like that. And, you know, it's not to the scale of that, but it's still Washington. Me and Dalton have been to Washington, D.C., so, like, we kind of get to recognize...
It feel sad a little bit, because it's like I've been there.
They shoot a missile in the Lincoln Memorial and blow that up because soldiers were in there. And then there's this great shot where it's right before audio fades in and we get into the meat of this battle. a helicopter flies over, and we just see what has become of Washington, D.C., and it's this tracking shot from behind the helicopter as it flies over, and it's just absolute chaos. You see gunfire everywhere, explosions.
And you're just seeing these portraits of all the American history on the wall and just in the surrounding area.
The final bit of the Battle of D.C. is they're looking for the president to execute him. They think they got him, they didn't. And Lee, Joel, and Jesse, Lee's kind of like, he's in the White House. Okay, and they get in there before even the Western forces do. And then they get in there, and from there it's just like clearing the White House, going through rooms, shooting at Secret Service, kind of just like running out of patience with the press secretary who's trying to negotiate, executing her, and then getting to the final hallway to the Oval Office to just get the job done.
And I like that Jesse ends up getting both the pictures there of the secretary and the president dying.
She got some money shots. Like, she's jump-started her career for sure.
Right, and
she's become the next Lee.
Joel ends up getting his final quote, which is, "Don't kill me."
Yeah. I was going to say, I think the filmmakers shifted my beliefs, honestly, because at the beginning of the film, you have this intro with the president where he's rehearsing this speech and he can hardly bring himself to say it. Like, you know, this war is going to be wrapping up, but it's intercut with all this violence and just mass murder of citizens and soldiers. I'll say this as well. Your ensemble cast, Sammy, he doesn't have good thoughts or impressions about the president because of his last term. So, like, I think they're kind of pitting you against the government at the beginning of the film and with your characters, and by the end, you see how brutal the Western forces are. They're like, no surrender, you're not going to Alaska or Greenland. We are executing the president, take no prisoners, we're taking over.
But here's something that you can talk about. We don't know the context of any of this. We find out the president served a third term, disbands the FBI,
utilized airstrikes on American civilians. Sammy even compares him to characters like Gaddafi and Mussolini, real-life dictators.
A dictator, yeah.
You get a vibe that the president in this movie has done something to cause this. But I also like how the start of this is kind of contextless. We're just like, we're in a war. Everybody's kind of talking about why they're in it. Here's the war. War is hell.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the themes of the movie is that war is hell, and we don't want America to go down this route. I think they do a great job at capturing what it kind of would be like.
Yeah, and something I gotta say is the narrative of this film, as told through wartime photographers,
is awesome.
Is really great. You get to see cool, like, there's moments where they show, like, what a wartime photographer would take throughout it. And, you know, sometimes Lee's taking a picture. It'll show you a still frame of, like, the picture that Lee would have taken. And it would show you the still frame of what Jesse would have taken.
Oh, yeah. You know, they, like, cut to the pictures. Mm-hmm. The cinematography in the film I thought was awesome. We get tons of establishing drone shots, tracking shots. You know, we are following them during the Battle of
road
DC.
Trip through hell, man.
Yeah. I mean, we're constantly following them. We cut to the still pictures.
It's subjective filmmaking to its finest.
Yeah.
Because we're looking through the lens of our two journalists, and we're just traveling with this group and experiencing the Civil War from their perspective.
Literally, you're viewing the film from their cameras at times.
Yes.
So
it's beautiful.
Oh, it's an extremely beautiful film, and you know the VFX are great. All the explosions, the gunshots. Oh, and
the sound design.
The sound design pairs with the cinematography so well, and the VFX. Like these explosions, gunshots, and stunts are making me jump out of my chair.
In spite of that, though, they know when not to use sound. And, like, they'll just let, you know, after an explosion, like in the beginning, you know, during that riot, whenever the bomb goes off, they know when not to use sound because our characters can't hear anything.
Right.
Like, this is subjective
We have a
storytelling.
complete silent soundtrack for bits of after explosions and stuff like that. That's awesome. We got to watch this with the Dolby Sound experience at AMC.
There's a moment when the Western forces are mobilizing to D.C. with all these helicopters and tanks and everything. And the theater was rumbling, and it really puts you in it. when it does that.
And I'll branch off to that final scene where they're clearing the White House. When they're making all their call-outs and everybody's just kind of moving accordingly, and you have all the call-outs, their footsteps, their guns clicking. The soundtrack is just awesome, and I love sitting in that
Something
theater.
I have to say after watching Roadhouse last weekend. Roadhouse 2024, the audio sometimes, it kind of went up and down in quality, I gotta say.
I heard every word of this film.
This was so well mixed.
I heard every word. And this is, while big gunfights are going on. Like, we're having people just laying down rounds at other soldiers. And you can hear someone turn back and say, hey, I need you up here. It helps you keep invested when the audio is mixed so well and you can hear characters saying stuff.
You know, the acting in this film is amazing.
Superb.
Kirsten Dunst is insane. She looks aged into the role. You know, they do a great makeup job at just making her look tired.
Tired, war-torn photographer.
Tired of just seemingly life. And then there's Joel, who's kind of like her little foil, and he's great.
Yeah, he's kind of some of the life in the film, and, you know, he even loses his mind a couple times.
Oh, that scene where he's screaming.
It's the Western forces that are leaving for
it's right
DC.
after Sammy's death.
Yeah, and
they
he's
arrive
just
at the
screaming.
base,
It's
and
after the Todd scene.
Yeah. Because of the death of his friend.
That's the
as
scene
well.
that kind of pushes them all over the edge. Jessie's an adult. I think they say she's 23, but she almost reminds you of like the kid of the team, and seeing her put in that much of harm's way.
She's the youngest member.
But she's amazing in the film,
Yeah.
too.
She is.
It's like her evolution throughout the film is insane. Her crying the first time they see anything remotely dangerous, to her taking the picture at the end and just having this kind of stone cold look as she does it. She obviously registers, oh, I'm traumatized by what I just did, but she's also like, I'm going to get up and keep taking photos.
Lee, she saves Jesse at the beginning, and then Jesse ends up getting Lee killed. Like, that is the harsh reality of things. She saves her from the bombing because she was getting beat up, and she gives her the vest.
It's just, I think that's just part of Jesse's character. Is it's part of that coming of age. Is she's just got to learn how to navigate like this world.
When Luke Skywalker lost Ben Kenobi.
Yes.
Like, it's that same kind of mentor-student relationship where it was like, you've taught me what you know, and now you've passed on. You helped me.
Ultimately, loved the character relationships between everybody on the road trip, though. You know, they bounced off each other amazing. Sammy plays this wise, sweet-hearted role of the car.
Yes.
And, you know, just seeing him get to the point after he gets shot to, hey, I can't drive anymore. And then they put him in the back of the car to die during their escape.
While they're going through the forest of embers, you know, too. And it's just such a beautiful... They play with bokeh a lot in the cinematography.
And you even
very shallow depth
you even
of field.
see him reach out to all the light.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and listen, like, this is an intense film. You know, the foot's on the pedal through a lot of it, folks, and you managed to get some laughs throughout it. There's some moments that's just like real people interacting, and something you'd probably laugh at if you were friends with people. Like, I know Kel definitely laughed at some parts, and like
Sammy in the beginning is funny.
Sammy's a funny guy in this, and Joel is too. And they're kind of like the foils, but Sammy also kind of acts as the old sage character.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think of like whenever he's like, oh, you're going to make me beg for a ride. And then whenever they're in the store and Joel's like, you're going to take a photo of me in this hat. And she's like, oh, I'm actually running low on film.
Yeah.
Like just fun little moments of levity.
Fun, like the comedy in the film is just this little slice of life.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of The Last of Us.
Yeah, I really loved it. I don't have much else to say about it.
What would you say you rank the film on a scale of 10?
My only thing that maybe hinders the score a little bit is just that we don't have any exposition to what is going on here. What caused these events to happen? It's kind of one of these things of that information would have, you know, kind of given me what I need to know to figure out what my side is, who I'm kind of rooting for. And I don't know that, but I love the characters I am rooting for, which are the press team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, I'm rooting who I'm supposed to be rooting for, which is humanity here. And I think that's what Alex Garland wants you to root for.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give this film a pretty high score.
Shoot, man, shoot.
I think I'm giving Civil War a 9 out of 10.
Very nice.
Good score. That's a good score.
I loved it. I thought it was incredible. My only qualms with it were maybe we could have had a little bit more context for maybe the presidency and like given a little bit more character to these factions that the U.S. is split into, these countries.
Right, because
give them
I didn't
some
know
character.
who was who a lot of times.
They didn't really tell you, and I think...
And maybe you're not supposed
Maybe
to
that's
know.
the point. It's like you're supposed to be on the side of humanity, of the war journalists, and it's like, we shouldn't be fighting wars, ultimately. And look at how...
Look at the destruction and terror and suffering it's wrought upon us.
And just how the film ends with just them posing, you know.
And I would say
over the
this
body
is
of
like
the
a
president.
theme in Alex Garland movies. You think about Ex Machina showing us the dangers of like AI and stuff like that.
But ultimately, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10.
It's a good score.
Good score, definitely.
I think it's very stylistic. I love the story. I love the parallels between Lee and Jesse, and the soundtrack's incredible.
I really like this film too. Not to be an echo chamber or anything, but I enjoyed it. Both viewings back to back. Not exactly a film I'd put on to have a good Friday night.
No. I will not casually watch this for fun.
Absolutely not.
Definitely an experience in the theaters. If you go see this, definitely try and go see this in a Dolby Cinema at AMC Theaters. Sound mix, picture, just chef's kiss. Couple of cons, I'd say, of the film is kind of in line with everybody else. Maybe a little more context to kind of certain events and stuff like that. But when you really draw it back, that's maybe not the purpose of the film. In the future, I might like to see a kind of extended cut or director's cut with maybe a little more interactions between the press crew.
I'd love that.
But as it stands now, my score of the film, I'm going to have to go 8.5 out of 10. My Letterboxd score was 4 stars. But 8.5 out of 10, I really enjoyed this. It's a remarkable thriller film. I like to call it a coming-of-age road trip through hell at this point.
That's an amazing title for the film. We hope you enjoy our review of Alex Garland's Civil War, Studio Cinema Saturday, Episode 7. Go watch more episodes of the show. We've done both Roadhouse films, Iron Claw, The Killer, Oppenheimer. Also on Studio 24, we have World Wrestling Wednesday, where you can be caught up on all of your wrestling news. The grandiose of our content comes from our short films. They Took Her as our newest one. We have a couple horror shorts on the channel for you.
TV Tuesday, new show.
We'll see you there.